insights, picks, results. This is Wizard Sports Picks. Beyond the Lines.
Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Lines for Friday, February the 6th, presented by Wizard Sports Picks. Ian Cameron with you, and we are here for another edition of the show to talk about a college basketball game coming up on Friday. I decided not to go with NBA for this edition of the show. We don't know who's going to be on the court for these teams coming out of the trade deadline with players going from one team to another. So a little difficult right now as of the time of this recording to have a firm grasp on the NBA betting card for Friday. So we'll give you one college basketball selection for Friday. Of course, no NHL on this edition of the show because the NHL is on Olympic break. No NHL now until February the 25th. That is when NHL action will resume. And I got to admit, I'm kind of disappointed about that because it has been a phenomenal NHL season for me. Ian Cameron at wizardsportspicks.com. Number one ranked on the website at wizardsportspicks.com in the NHL this season. So unfortunately, not a chance to keep piling up the profits in the NHL for the next few weeks, but still lots going on. Make sure you check the website, wizardsportspicks.com. Daily premium picks. Get on board, too, for a long-term subscription. You can choose from 3-day, 7-day, 30-day, and 1-year all sports subscription options on the website with any of our great handicappers. We've still got NBA, college basketball ongoing for the next few weeks. Olympic hockey, I will be involved in it as well. That might be something that's available on the website. We'll see as we get closer to the event. And of course, Super Bowl 60 this Sunday. I will indeed have a side and or total on the game available on the website. It's also been a terrific NFL season for me. Number one at wizardsportspicks.com in the NFL. We're having a profitable NBA season as well. So make sure you check out the website, wizardsportspicks.com, and get yourself some daily premium picks and or a long-term subscription with any of the great handicappers on the website. Also enter your email address on the homepage at wizardsportspicks.com, and you will receive free plays and free picks sent to your email and your inbox each and every day. All right, let's talk college basketball for Friday. We'll give you one game and one pick on this edition of the show, and we'll go to a little Atlantic 10 action on Friday night. Loyola Chicago, they're taking on Davidson, and right now the Davidson Wildcats double-digit home favorite here in this game. The current number across the board right now has Davidson in that 12-point favorite range here, 12.5 actually at a couple of spots. 138.5, 139 is the total. So shop around depending on which total you like in that game. I'm going to make a case to take the points here with Loyola Chicago. They're getting 12.5 right now at a couple of spots, including BetMGM. And I'm going to endorse the Ramblers here, Loyola Chicago, plus 12.5 against Davidson. I don't think Davidson's a great team in this conference, and their record would kind of indicate that. You know, they're a middling team in the Atlantic. Really, they've had a middling season overall. I mean, Davidson 13-9 for the entire season, 5-5 in conference play, 11-10 against the spread for this team. And more importantly, when you look at Davidson's profile, they are a slow-paced team. They are certainly capable at the offensive end. I don't think they're great at the defensive end, though. They have had games where they have struggled at that end of the court, but, you know, they are a methodical team. You know, they're going to use up the shot clock when they possess the basketball. Oftentimes, there are fewer possessions in their games. Davidson's not the kind of team that is always conducive to a team you trust to win by double digits. And when you look at their results in conference play, you know, they're coming off a 91-82 loss to St. Louis, who are by far the class of the Atlantic 10, without question. An incredible season the Billikens have had, but they poured their heart and soul into that game. They played their guts out, Davidson, and they played St. Louis pretty even for most of that game, you know, until the second half when St. Louis went on that inevitable run. You know, they're just able to score points in bunches. and just able to pull away and win games. And St. Louis was able to do that, turning a close game. In fact, Davidson led at halftime, and St. Louis ended up winning 91-82 in that game. Davidson did get the point spread cover by a half point in that game, but they really maxed out their effort in that game against the class of the Atlantic 10, the best team in the conference. And I question about how much is going to be in Davidson's tank for this game just 48 hours later. Remember, that game was on Wednesday night, Tuesday night, and now you got to play on Friday night here, 72 hours later, hosting Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago also played on Tuesday night. They played LaSalle, and they got a 71-61 win in that game for their second conference win for this Loyola Chicago team. And yes, it's been a rough season for Loyola Chicago, a team that was expected to be better than their current record would indicate. And yes, they have not been a good point spread team, but a lot of their point spread failures came early in the season. When you look at them in conference play, they've covered at least a couple of times. And yes, they went through another rough patch where they get blown out by double digits against Dayton, St. Bonaventure, Duquesne, and St. Joe's. But I have seen some real tangible improvement here in Loyola Chicago the last couple games. They've covered back-to-back games. That hasn't happened very often this year. They went to VCU and gave the VCU Rams a pretty tough game. In fact, Loyola Chicago at halftime against VCU was tied with them, and then eventually VCU wore them down and won by 14. Loyola Chicago still covered, though, as 18.5-point dogs. And in their last game, could argue one of their best defensive games they've had of the entire season. 71-61, a team that hasn't been very good defensively all season, but were able to hold LaSalle to 40% shooting, 33% from three-point range, and able to get a 10-point win at home against LaSalle. Building some confidence, Loyola Chicago, and enough confidence that I think they can come into Davidson and at least be mildly competitive. And being mildly competitive is all we need when you consider Loyola Chicago is getting 12.5 points in this game. And again, I'll go back and remind you of what Davidson's done here in conference play. They're not a win by blowout margin type of team. You look at their results in A10 play, their victories for the most part have been close games. Aside from a win against Richmond where they won by 25, which is really the anomaly, they won by 5 at George Washington, they won by 5 against Fordham, and then the rest of the recent games in conference play, they ended up losing. Now, they did win by 15 at Loyola Chicago on January the 7th, but Loyola Chicago was very banged up, very injury-riddled at that time. You look at the injury report now for Loyola Chicago, and it's much better, including, arguably, I would say, their best player and certainly their top scorer, Justin Moore. He did not play in that first meeting against Davidson at Loyola Chicago when Loyola Chicago lost by 15. He will play here in this game, and he will make a major difference here for Loyola Chicago offensively in this game and give them a little bit more firepower. And this is an angle that often works for me in college basketball, in conference play, in revenge situations, where you have a home team like Loyola Chicago that lost the first game against an opponent at home, and they did. Loyola Chicago losing to Davidson as a slight home favorite. They were 1.5-point favorites at home against Davidson back on January 7th. They lost by 15, and oftentimes in the rematch on the road seeking revenge, that team is a road underdog and often catching a healthy amount of points. And in a lot of instances over the years in this situation, the road dog is covered in revenge after losing at home, specifically as a favorite in the first meeting. So again, home teams that lose the first meeting, particularly as a favorite, and then they're a road underdog in the rematch in revenge mode, that's often a bet-on profile, and it's been a bet-on angle for me in college basketball in conference play over the years, and that angle suggests taking the points here with Loyola Chicago, and that is what I'm going to do. So for Friday night in college basketball action in the Atlantic 10, I'll recommend Loyola Chicago plus 12.5 against Davidson. I like the Ramblers to at least keep it within this big number on Friday night. Loyola Chicago plus 12.5 against Davidson for my college basketball pick here on this edition of Beyond the Lines. That's a wrap for this edition of the show. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button. Check out wizardsportspicks.com and get on board with any of the great handicappers on the website. Don't forget it's Super Bowl Sunday, and you're not going to want to miss the next time I'm with you here on Beyond the Lines on Sunday. I will give you a Super Bowl preview. I'll talk side, I'll talk total, and I'll even give you a couple of props that I like in the Super Bowl between Seattle and New England on Sunday's edition of Beyond the Lines. I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy the games and good luck. And thanks for watching the Friday, February 6th edition of Beyond the Lines presented by Wizard Sports Picks.